Happy New Year, 2021. We are streaming from New York City today. I'm on a hotel Wi-Fi, so if there's trouble and we lose each other, you're on your own. Should practice anyway. So this is the portable shrine. So like when traveling, pictures of the gurus and the lamas and stuff. So I've done that like all over the place. I've become an expert at setting up little temporary shrines in strange places. But whatever inspires you, whatever connects you to your practice, to the Dharma, it's always good. I hope you're hearing me okay, as I don't have my microphone with me, which I usually bring, which I usually have at home, but I'm on the road today. So, but good to get 20 behind us, 21 now, we're in 2021. So this is the first time we've started the year together practicing meditation, which is pretty cool. And, let's set our intentions, not only for today and for today's practice, but maybe for the year, maybe for the rest of our lives. Say the four immeasurables. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. We say this prayer every time we practice, but and it could seem very, the whole practice can seem very kind of, I don't know, pie in the sky, new agey, pretentious even to people, or to change your thinking and to change how you interact with the world. It takes, you have to do things differently, to learn a skill, to learn a new job, you have to train yourself, right? You have to study and you have to practice and you have to learn things. So that's what we're doing, and many people have gone down this path with great results and with great benefit to many beings. So let's keep that in mind. I'm excited for this new year. With that in mind, let us sit for, I don't know, someone tell me, how long should we sit for? Somebody give me 5 minutes? No, too short. 12 minutes. No, I like even odd numbers, you know that. 11. Okay, Sandra says 11. Let's do 11 minutes. Okay. I'll talk you through, well, let's start with it's a new year, a little bit basic technique. So we sit, if you're sitting on the floor, cross-legged, however is comfortable. I hope you could see that okay. The important thing is, you may find it more comfortable to have your hips above your knees. That's why you sit on a cushion. Some people can be fine on the floor. Your back should be straight but not rigid. Arms just resting. Let's see, resting on here, or I do this. Getting very high tech here. So palm, back of the hand, curved like that, resting in your lap. Some people do that. So the head is slightly tilted at an angle. Lips are slightly opened. Tongue is resting at the top of your mouth, behind your top teeth, lightly. relaxed mouth. You're not carrying tension. The same with the neck. Not rigid and not, without any kind of attention. There's not tension, attention. There should be some attention in the body, but not like militaristic, but just present. Our tradition is eyes open, and it's not this rigid fixed gaze. It's not a spaced out of focus gaze, resting on whatever's in front of you. It could be your shrine. It could be something of you. It could be a flower. For those of you who are here week after week, I'm sorry to repeat myself all the time, but I guess, I repeat myself to myself all the time, just remembering how to do this properly and reminding myself. And we use that image or the metaphor of a guitar string, right? If it's too loose, it doesn't make a sound. If it's too tight, it doesn't make a sound. There's enough tension that it vibrates properly. That's how we're sitting, really. We breathe through our nose, in and out. If we can't, we breathe through nose and mouth, or just mouth. It's a relaxed breath, an easy breath, not a deep breath unless you need a gulp of oxygen, and not a shallow breath. And the breath is our anchor, and we should focus on that place where the breath goes in and out, between the nostrils and the upper lip. And put our attention on the breath. That is our anchor. And by anchor, I mean we're going to continually go back to focusing on the breath there. Because what's going to happen as we start to sit, when I start this timer in a little bit, our minds will think, because that's what minds do. And meditation is about working with our minds. That's what we're doing. It's not about stopping thought. It's not about having no thought. It's about working with the mind. That's what we're doing. Because our minds are how we perceive and interact with the world, primarily. We use the image of clear, stainless, limitless, perfectly open and unstained sky as an image of the mind, like a metaphor. Thoughts, which will come in, are like the clouds. Emotions are more like a storm. They arise from the sky. They are part of the sky, but you can't say they are the sky. Although they are of the sky, they will dissolve back into the sky. They're not. They're made of it. They come from it. It's like a wave on the ocean. A wave is not the ocean, but it comes from the ocean, and it is inseparable from the ocean in a way. Right? Same with clouds, but they're temporary thoughts and emotions. That's one thing we know. What's not temporary is the mind itself. It's always there, always has been there. That clarity, that limitless potentiality. It's the baseline of who we are, right? So as we meditate and as a thought comes in, we don't reject the thought. We don't judge the thought. We don't say that's bad. We don't get down on ourselves because we're thinking. We just notice that we're thinking. And once we notice that we're thinking, we go back to the breath. It's like we're lightly touched. Oh, there's a thought. My lamp is buzzing, making a noise. Back to the breath. That's it. I have an appointment at 2:00 today. Back to the breath. I'm not judging. It's going to be a bad appointment. It's going to be a good. I got what I have to do. Our tendency is to follow the thought, or the thought pulls us along in a chain, like a string of beads that never ends, one that leads to the next, that leads to the next, that leads to the next. And we've lived our lives that way. But the string, I guess that would connect all those things, is the mind in a way, because if you take away the beads, there's still the string. So, with all that in mind, let us meditate for 11 minutes, based on Sandra's recommendation. stay with the practice as I speak. So when the thought comes, I have an appointment today. I keep talking about that. So I recognize it. And you can do two things. You can go back to the breath, which is what we really, that's our anchor. Or you can just imagine that thought as the cloud and watch it dissipate into the sky. And then go back to the breath. Somehow making that connection that that's how the thoughts arise and dissolve is helpful, because they do. Very often we can become so possessed by the thoughts and owned by them, and they solidify. And you can't get out of them. Well, this practice opens the door to start working with that kind of dynamic, that working with thoughts in a way that doesn't allow them to just remain so solid and possess us. And this is practice that will happen from time to time, but as you continue in your practice, you'll find yourself being able to work with them better, without a doubt. Excellent. If you have some questions, use the Q&A function. We'll get to some questions in a bit. When you start looking into meditation and even mindfulness, whatever that means, mindfulness practice, and even Buddhism in some ways, there's a lot of different information out there. What I am doing basically, and I say this all the time, I'm not a teacher, I'm a fellow student. I've had the benefit of being, around a lot of great teachers and having teachings with some great masters, really. So I'm just communicating what I've heard and what I've learned as best I can. But I do want you to know I'm really committed to being faithful to those things. I'm not interpreting them into my own kind of thing at all. I think it's really important to be very, very precise about these practices, be it just technique of meditation or whatever kind of, when we do readings and talk about them, or questions that we discuss, we're trying to be as precise as we can to the teachings. There's a lot of vagueness, I find, in terms of spirituality, even meditation. And even setting our intention and dedication, those prayers we do at the beginning, and that's part and parcel of the practice that I've been taught. It's not just, what a nice thing to dedicate, what a nice thing to set intentions. It's not that at all. It is part and parcel of the practice that I've been taught by Buddhist teachers, Tibetan Buddhist teachers, especially my Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Garchen Rinpoche. That's him. So let me do this, as reverence and respect and devotion. So just know that. And I encourage you all to do the same, and in your pursuit and your study, and if you're getting into this more and more, go to the source. I think there's a lot of information out there that's derivative, sometimes reductive from the source. The source is Buddhadharma and the teachings of the Buddha. And authentic lineage is very important. Authentic lineage meaning Garchen Rinpoche, his lineage is Drikung Kagyu. I've spoken about this before. There's 4 main branches of Tibetan Buddhism. Gelug, which is really what the Dalai Lama's belongs to, and his Lama Zopa. Lama Yeshe, although the Dalai Lama also is, a leader of all Tibetan Buddhism, but he is a member of the Gelug uh, branch. There's the Kagyu, which is Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and Garchen Rinpoche, and then there's the Nyingma, which is known as the old school, which is probably the first branch of Tibetan Buddhism, and then the Sakya. So Garchen Rinpoche is Drikkan Kagyu lineage. The Kagyu lineage itself, when the Karmapa is part of the Karma Kagyu lineage. But the Karma Kagyu lineage really we trace back to Tilopa, who was an Indian mystic practitioner, yogi. So I'm going to read, usually we read from books. Today I'm reading from some just amazing posts I found on Instagram yesterday. Sometimes, you go on and these things go right to cut right to where you want to be. So this is by Tilopa, who's also called a Mahasiddhi, which means like a great yogi, great practitioner. The illumination from an oil lamp lights the room instantly, even if it has been dark for eons. Mind is boundless radiance. How can the slightest darkness remain in the room of daily perception? But one who clings to mental processes cannot awaken the radiance of mind. Strenuously seeking truth by investigation and concentration, one will never appreciate the unthinkable simplicity and bliss that abide at the core. To uncover this fertile ground, cut through the roots of complexity with the sharp gaze of naked awareness, remaining entirely at peace, transparent and content. You need not expend great effort nor store up extensive spiritual power. Remain in the flow of sheer awareness. Particularly, I'd like to draw your attention to the first sentence of this. The illumination from an oil lamp lights the room instantly, even if it has been dark for eons. So we were talking about before how the mind, how thoughts there's this limitless train of thoughts, one leading to the next, leading to the next, leading to the next. And our minds have been occupied by that forever, really. But even though maybe for limitless lifetimes in the past, that's how our mind has been, finally recognizing that empty nature of mind and that clarity of mind through the practice of meditation, you're illuminating this dark room. So even a room that's been dark for 1,000 years, you bring a lamp into it, it lights it up. I think that's a really important concept, It's never too late. And the possibility for recognizing this nature of mind and connecting to it is always with us. And once it's lit, it's lit, I mean, it might go out again when our train of thoughts return, but we can light it up again. Once we know that A, it needs to be lit, and B, how to light it. One who clings to mental processes, the chain of thought, cannot awaken to the radiance of mind. I love that I read yesterday, and it really, really just hit me. So that's Tilopa. You can investigate the Tilopa and what songs of Tilopa. A lot of these masters, they're called dohas. It's like a song. So the teachings were almost like poems or songs. Milarepa is the 100,000 songs of Milarepa. Milarepa was Tilopa, and then who taught Naropa, who taught Marpa. Marpa was the first Tibetan. Marpa was a translator who went to India, got the teachings from Naropa. Naropa who got the teachings from Tilopa. And then Milarepa. If you can find, there's many books about biographies on Milarepa. You should read him. He's a Tibetan saint, really. So that was the Kagyu lineage. Now we're going to read something by our beloved Lama Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who we've read from one of his books. This is from another one of his books this is from the collected works of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche by Shambhala Publications. Whatever impure perceptions, Nick, if you have that other cover too, if you can put it up by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, I forget I think it was the Heart Essence, just so they can see his incredible face. If not, it's okay. Whatever impure perceptions one has now are all an illusion. Thinking to cut the root of illusion and change it into emptiness, one should develop confidence that today's perceptions and last night's dream are an illusion. Again and again, one should meditate on perceptions of daily life as the play of deity, mantra, and dharmakaya. By deity, we don't mean gods. We mean enlightened energy, masters that achieved enlightenment, and that have committed to being a benefit to beings, if you will. There's other ways of discussing deity, but that's just one of them. Whatever one does during the daytime, one should think of it as a dream. If one feels happy because of meeting friends or relatives, one should think it is a dream. If one is joyful because of being in a beautiful garden, one should think it is a dream. Thus, thinking that whatever happens and whatever one does is a dream when dreaming at night, one will also recognize that to be a dream. Knowing that it is a dream, one will know that one can transform it, and transforming it, one can change impure into pure. With that confidence, when one wakes up from one's sleep, one will know that it is easy to change one's dream. The reason it is easy is that dreams are just a manifestation of prana mind, wisdom mind, and do not really exist. That's talking about emptiness, or shunyata, which we have the great Vesna Wallace gave us a great teaching on that. In I think that was session 11 of 102. If you want to learn about emptiness, go to the IGTV or the YouTube. And you can see that teaching because she goes into emptiness, but basically saying, everything is impermanent that we see. Ourselves are impermanent, and we should start to embody that. Nothing is essentially fixed, really. And there's one more thing I wanted to read, maybe two things. Let's see. Okay. This is from Shantideva. There's a lot of good stuff that I marked off for us. Is this Shantideva? Sorry. And it was translated by Vesna Wallace and her husband Alan Wallace. Our friend Vesna Wallace is one of the translators of this book. The first meditation of this year is a meditation on equanimity by Shantideva. This is from the buddhaland.me Instagram page. Two things are to be practiced on the level of relative bodhicitta: meditation on the equality of self and others, and meditation on the exchange of self and others. All beings, ourselves included, are in exactly the same predicament of wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer. That's a really important concept in Buddhism. All beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. For this reason, we must vigorously train in ways to develop the intention to protect others as much as ourselves, creating happiness and dispelling suffering. We may think that this is impossible, but it isn't. Although they have no ultimate grounds for doing so, all beings think in terms of I and mine. Because of this, they have a conception of other, fixated on the other as something alien, although this too has no basis in reality. Aside from being merely mental imputations, I and other are totally unreal. They are both illusory, just as it is impossible to cut the sky in two with a knife. When the space-like quality of egolessness is realized, it is no longer possible to make a separation between I and other, and there arises an attitude of wanting to protect others as oneself and of taking them as one's own. Thus, for the realization of the equality of I and other, it is essential to grasp that I and other are merely labels without any basis in reality. The way to reflect upon equality is as follows. We can distinguish the various parts of our bodies, hands, feet, head, inner organs, and so on. Nevertheless, in a moment of danger, we protect them all, not wanting any of them to be hurt, considering that they all form a single body. We think, this is my body, and we cling to it and protect it as a whole, regarding it as a single entity. In the same way, the whole aggregate of beings who, in their different joys and sorrows, are all like us in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer, should be identified as a single entity, our I. I'm going to read that again. That's a huge concept. We all think, this is my body, and we cling to it and protect it as a whole, regarding it as a single entity, In the same way, the whole aggregates of beings who in their different joys and sorrows are all like us in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer, should be identified as a single entity, our I, the letter in quotes. We should protect them from suffering in just the same way as we now protect ourselves. The word body does not at all refer to a single indivisible whole. I mean, that is a revolutionary concept in terms of thinking about ourselves and our world and our relationship to it and its relationship to us. And but real spiritual progress and awakening takes kind of a revolutionary effort, and approach. I love that. Okay, I think there's something else I wanted to share from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who we've spoken about before. Oh yeah, this is important. When you take, this is Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, we've read from his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. I think we read through another one of his as well. When you take a vow, you are binding yourself together with the teachings. You already have a vague idea of the teachings, and now you would like to tighten the whole thing up to make sure that it is actually being practiced and worked on. The term dompa, or binding, applies to all vows. The refuge vow is when you take refuge and you officially become a Buddhist, and you say, you take this vow in front of your Lama and you say, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha meaning the Buddha himself, and your Lama as well. The Dharma being the teachings, the Sangha being the congregation, your fellow Buddhists, your Buddhist community. The Bodhisattva vow, as well as the vows of Tantrayana. I'm not going to get into the vows of Tantrayana. That's kind of a more mystical, almost esoteric type of Tibetan Buddhism, which you have to get through a teacher, a qualified teacher. But the Bodhisattva vow is another vow you take going into the Mahayana teachings of Buddhism. And the Bodhisattva vow, basically, you are saying, until samsara is empty, I will bring benefit to all beings. So instead of it just achieving enlightenment and kind of being in some nirvana-like state for the rest of eternity, you are vowing to come back in reincarnated form, so you can bring benefit to other beings until all beings become enlightened. That's the Bodhisattva vow. The discipline is living up to your aspiration to work for others. You would like to work with sentient beings and relate with the rest of the world, to offer your service and have your particular effort be put toward the other people's benefit. You realize that the attainment of enlightenment can only take place for the benefit of others rather than yourself. That's the Bodhisattva vow. Because some people And some teachings talk about achieving enlightenment really out of one's own sake, for one's own benefit. The Bodhisattva vow, the Mahayana teachings, takes that a step further and says, no, I'm going to work towards enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, and I'm going to commit to pursuing that to pursuing the benefit of all beings until all beings are enlightened. It goes back to the last teaching, considering the aggregate of all beings as being part of the I, your I, and not separate from you. If you're doing it for yourself, you could become an egomaniac. You might like to be an important person in history, or you might want to be something less significant than that, but still you would like to build yourself up, to create a monument to yourself. But in this case, none of those possibilities are available because you are not attaining enlightenment for yourself. However, in order to work with others, you need more training. If you want to become a good chauffeur, you first have to learn how to be a good driver. On a crude level, when you take the Bodhisattva vow, you make certain promises and take on certain disciplines because of your surroundings. You commit yourself not for yourself, but for others' sake. On a more refined level, having done such a thing, there is an immense input into your memory. You realize what you've done, and you realize that you're stuck with that particular process and style of thinking for the rest of this life, as well as the lives to come. You cannot actually shake it off by saying it was a rehearsal. It becomes part of your basic existence. However, simply taking the Bodhisattva vow does not make you a Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvahood is a spiritual level. After you have taken the Bodhisattva vow and gone through a training process, you may then finally begin to tread the Mahayana path and become a Bodhisattva. Lots of food for thought. Let's see if we can answer some questions. The more compassionate aware I become through meditation, the more frustrated I become with the relationships and individuals. But rather than feeling like that being a negative, it seems like to be part of the positive progress. Did you or still you do experience anything similar? Yes, I think that's exactly correct. That's part of the process. It's like when we first sit down to meditate, all of a sudden we're aware how busy our minds are. So many people kind of that I'm in contact with about these classes say, I tried to meditate and my mind is screaming at me and it's too busy and I realize I can't do it. As if only people with calm, unthinking minds can meditate. It's not. Everybody's mind does. Everybody's mind is busy. That's what the mind does. That's why we need to meditate. So when you first start to meditate, all of a sudden you're aware of all these thoughts, right? And before we haven't been. It's the same thing, starting to have some kind of mindfulness and and working with your thoughts and looking at your thoughts and taking a responsibility to be more positive in your interactions, basically, and not always, interacting with people out of, the knee-jerk reflexive emotions of whatever attachment and aversion. You start to see it. You start to see there's different ways of behaving and interacting. That comes through practice. And at first that can be a little bit overwhelming and different, but that's part of it. It's the same with meditation, realizing, whoa, how many thoughts I have and just sitting here doing nothing. My mind is all over the place. Whereas your mind was all over the place anyway, you just never looked at it. Mind looking at mind reveals the busyness, and the madness that our thoughts, create. Is it okay to stand with this if my back is not too good right now? Yes. It's also okay to lean, sit against something if your back, it's better to adjust posture and do the meditation than not to do it. So however you have to adjust because of whatever physical difficulties, limitations, that's okay. I mean, there's a thing, walking meditation, which is a real thing and is part of and a Buddhist practice, and a lot of people do. The difficulty is if you start that without really having a great foundation of sitting meditation, it can become just taking a walk. Taking a walk, and you're looking at the sights. So yesterday I walked along the Hudson River and it was beautiful, and you know, I was trying to do some mantra recitation and stuff, but I got lost in the thought, in the walk, people's faces and people running and memories of being in this area in the past, so um it's good to, if you can't sit, stand, lean against something, this foundational practice is really good. So adapt it as need be. Do you have any advice on how to practice mindfulness while working in a busy office? My advice would only be to practice mindfulness. I mean, and mindfulness is a strange term, and I'm not totally sure what it means exactly. I would say practice meditation as we're practicing now. You're not going to go into, sitting cross-legged on the floor in your office, but you can just become aware of your thoughts. You can become aware of, okay, this person next to you is chewing their gum loud. And kind of going back to the breath like we practice here, instead of just reacting or just yelling, just, take a minute. Why is that bothering you? Or what's the best way to address it? The same way, you're working, you're stressed out, going to the breath, realizing that, this busy hour is going to kind of wane and you'll have your lunch out. Whatever you need to do to get through to the day and just kind of get out of that solidified thought that's difficult, that solidified mental state of tension, of stress. So it's almost like you're using the practice covertly. You're meditating covertly and nobody knows. You're sitting at your desk. Meditation happens in the mind. It's not, this is the formal practice and it's very conducive to it. But, you know, meditation is about working with the mind, and that can be done anywhere. Can you tell us what the chant was at the beginning of the session? That is Garchen Rinpoche, my teacher, uh, reciting the white Tara mantra. Om Tare Ture Mama Ayujana Punya Pusum Kuru Soha. And that's a practice that he does. He does. There are white Tara teachings on YouTube by Garchen Rinpoche if you have any interest in it. Michael, you seem to have a real enriched and enjoyable life. Seem. I seem to. Looks can be deceiving. As a Buddhist, do you have any thoughts or fears on what your next life might bring? And is this something Buddhists ponder? Of course, you do ponder it. Thoughts and fears on what your next life might bring. You must have confidence and faith in creating positive karma in this life, which comes through practice. I have great faith and devotion to my practice and my teacher especially. And if the more I dedicate myself to that practice and try to lessen my negative karma, act negatively less, create, do less harm and do more good, that's going to be a benefit in the next life. That's the only control we have. Were you able to connect with these great masters normally, or did your fame help? No, I sought them out normally like everyone else does. My fame didn't help me. Fame's not going to help. Fame might actually be a hindrance to these things. I won't go into why, but they're accessible to all. Most, I don't know many famous people who go to these teachings, to be honest. What brought you to meditation? Well, Buddhism brought me to meditation. And what brought me to Buddhism was a level of dissatisfaction in my life and a feeling that I needed that I needed some kind of spiritual path. And that's after achieving a certain degree of success that I had pursued for a long time, that I thought would bring me, solve all my problems and bring me every happiness. And it did bring me some happiness in a lot of different levels. I'm not going to lie about that. But um, it also brought a lot of levels of um, dissatisfaction and negative behaviors and stuff like that. And I realized, luckily, that I needed to change. And listen, I am a student. I'm a practitioner. I don't have all the answers. I have not solved all my problems. I have flaws and negative, I fall into negative emotion, and you know what I mean? I'm not coming to you from a place of having figured it all out. I come to it as a place of a student who has, at least at a minimum, realized the value of these teachings. And I struggle like you all do. So please know that I do not do this out of a place of thinking I have realized anything except the value of these teachings. Why do you think Tibetan Buddhism is more popular in the USA than other schools? I don't know if it is more popular. Zen Buddhism is popular, and various other Mahayana schools. I think Tibetan Buddhism really did get popular here because of the kindness of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was one of the first to really plant the flag of Tibetan Buddhadharma here in the United States. Um, I think Tibetan Buddhism is popular because Tibet was so isolated for so long, and the teachings were such an inherent part of society. It was actually like a theocracy, that the Tibetan Buddhism, and the Dalai Lama is a High Lama who was running the country basically, but so isolated for so long, so that the teachings, which began in Tibet, I guess about 1,000 years ago, maybe more, stayed, this oral lineage. I was talking about lineage before, direct lineage from teacher to teacher to student to teacher to student, that's been passed on from the Buddha and then eventually made its way to Tibet. And it was very, very well preserved authentically. And I think that's why Tibetan Buddhism is popular. But I have not studied other schools of Buddhism besides Tibetan. I've read a little bit. Um, Suzuki, D.T. Suzuki's Zen stuff, which I liked a little bit, and Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, Thich Nhat Hanh. I've read some of them, but I pretty much stick to the Tibetan Buddhism just because that's what I connect to. But I'm sure, I know there's benefit from all the schools and from many spiritual paths as well. This question may be too personal. This is from Francesca, and I understand if it's not answered. Realizing meditation is different than religion. What religion were you raised in, and what interested you in about Buddhism? I was raised Roman Catholic, but I never quite really connected to it, and it's just about in my teens I just kind of forgot it, just drifted away from it. Some people don't consider Buddhism necessarily a religion. It's not a theistic religion. There's no God, right? Buddha was not a god, is not worshipped as a god, was a man who achieved kind of the ultimate level of consciousness, if you will, which is, in my opinion, the ultimate fruition of being human in a way. What interested me, I spoke about that today as well, why I got into it. I started reading Buddhism in my teens, and I didn't understand it, but there was something about it that appealed to me. I guess, the idea about peace and, but it took me another, 20 years to get into it. Okay. Let's do another 7 minutes of meditating. How about 9 minutes? I know some people have to go because of the hour is up, but let's do 9 minutes. I don't know. I'll see if any other questions came in. Do you have any recommendations for books to read on meditation? Meditation in Action. Meditation in Action by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. That's a pretty good one. Share. As a 60-year-old yoga instructor, couldn't agree more. Mindfulness is an overused and not understandable phrase, word. Obviously, we're working with the mind and dealing with the mind, and we also speak about mind looking at mind, right? Because there's the mind, there's the thought, and then there's the mind that's looking at the thought. I guess that's mindfulness. I mean, I think it can be an overused phrase. I mean, that's why I was talking about kind of sticking to the teaching. Like I said, and meditation is becoming very popular now, which is a really good thing. And there are these apps, and there's all kinds of people teaching it, including me and lots of other. But I'm really coming from, trying to just communicate what I learned from my teachers. These are Tibetan Buddhists, and my teacher in particular, Garchen Rinpoche, as best as I can adhere to it. And I think there should be a precision to it, and really following these teachings. When it starts to get watered down, and people who, are kind of teaching a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I mean, if it works for you, whatever works for you is fine. But in terms of practicing these teachings, I think they need to be done pretty precisely. And that's what we're trying to do here. Are there any interesting New Year's messages from the Dalai Lama? I posted one yesterday on my stories. He did a New Year's message. What benefits have you strengthened since doing our sessions? It's a commitment. It's a commitment to showing up and, being prepared and being in a frame of mind to show up and do this together. It's just deep in my practice that way, doing it with this community we've created together here. Something very powerful about that and meaningful. The fact that, many of you show up week after week and are getting something out of this and like we said before, we said it in terms of dedication, but it works in terms of medication, meditation, not medication. Meditation is a medication. Whatever, how many people are live doing this, and then how many people watch these videos online and when they're posted and maybe get something out of them, they're drops into the ocean that they send reverberations into the world, into your immediate circles, which extend into the world. Is very important, and I think very profound. I don't think what I'm saying, it's not profound. It's profound that people are doing this together and committing to it on a regular basis. Okay, let's dedicate the whatever merit we received or generated through this practice to the benefit of all beings. Our closing prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. See you next week.